welcome to Combat Thoughts. I'm Robbie.
I'm Lee.
And I'm Alex.
We're going to take a deeper look at culture and philosophy behind martial arts. All right, I was waiting for it to tell us it was recording, but apparently...
I don't know if it's... That's Zoom, I think.
Nah, this does 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, stop doing it.
Stop doing it. It's not doing it anymore. So, today's topic is why are black belts dicks? Or rather, it's more... Okay, so it's about the idea that... I mean, it's central. It's around the idea that people get black belts and then they get a lot of respect outside of JiuJitsu, and people kind of hold them up to be things that they definitely are not. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty topical at the moment. So,
yeah, I think there's a creation of like for want of a better word, it's like a god complex. You're the king of your gym. You're the most respected. You're the one that when new people come in or people that are already there come in, they want to befriend you because you're the one who's in charge of their promotions to different belts. And it kind of creates, it's similar to like footballers when you see like a 17-year-old footballer earning £100,000 a week and then he smashes his Lamborghini into a wall. And it's like, these people don't get told no often. And when they want something, they tend to get it. And they tend to get things given to them or thrown at them. That often, when things don't go their way, they don't know how to react because they're not well-adjusted people because they've never been told no, or they've not. If a jiu-jitsu person's been like not been told to fuck off, they react badly to it. And I think, for me, that must be where it comes from.
I think it's another thing to mention is. Likelihood is people who are black belts, and I'm not saying we're not saying every black belt is like this. Let's be fucking clear. But we're talking about those few individuals who, when they have black belts, they take advantage of that situation.
To be fair, I don't even think that's really so much what we're talking about. I mean, at the end of the day, people in any position of power can be dicks. It's more of a question of why are they able to do this? Like, one, why do we see black belts as being proficient in other areas of life? And the other one is, you know what I find really strange is that if you were to say, okay, here is someone's got a doctorate in their field. They are like a world-class heart surgeon or something like that. And here is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Which one seems more impressive, like, on the face of it? I mean, I'm not talking about, like, world champion, ADCC. They have a black belt or something.
Yeah, it's the heart surgeon.
Fucking heart surgeon, right? Except, and I think the trouble is the environment that we're in, because we go to the gym.
It's a very closed environment as well.
And the place that we all meet is the environment, not where the heart surgeon or the CEO of the company is there. Perhaps the CEO of the company is a better idea, because if you meet him in the company, he's hot shit. Mm-hmm. Meet him in a jiu-jitsu dojo, or whatever we want to call it. He might be good, he might be bad. It's irrelevant, which is one of the cool things about jiu-jitsu is that you can go in there and really what's important is work ethic, experience, stuff like that. I mean, that's fantastic. But it also creates a weird environment where we're all there looking up to this black belt who within that environment is really impressive. But if I see him in the street, I'm probably still going to give more respect to my instructor than I am to, I don't know what most of the people I work with do for a living. One of them might be the CEO of an incredibly impressive company, and I just have fuck all idea. And so the black belt gets more respect than anyone else.
But that's interesting. Jiu-jitsu. That's the person. There's a clear definition in a jiu-jitsu gym of like who your role model should be. So when you start, you tend to make friends as a fresh white belt. You tend to win one of the blue belts over. and then he starts to like give you a bit of advice and whatever. And then when you get to blue, you probably have a few purple and brown belts who'll have roles with you and help you out and things like that. There's a clear hierarchy of where your role models are and where like your peers are and where you should look for advice. That is only given on like an athletic endeavor. So like you've done jiu-jitsu for longer, you've trained harder, you've won some competitions. A heart surgeon's a role model because they've gone through the training and they've done things like this. Although when you look at like role models, a role model has to have the right characteristics to be. That they're not together in jiu-jitsu. So if you look at your black belts as a role model, there's a good chance they're not going to hold the same characteristics you'd want in a role model because they may just only live for jiu-jitsu.
So I've thought this is a really weird. I think the entry level to becoming a coach is, in a way, way too low.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's essentially the entry level is. It's not even. Let's call it having a black belt. In theory, it might not even be that. If I move to a little village, having a purple belt, or probably even a blue belt, depending on like the environment, might be enough. But that's the bar to entry, is getting the black belt. But jiu-jitsu is like the only thing that I partake in where we kind of go, like at university, we never went, oh, you... Actually, no, maybe we did at university, but you wouldn't go, oh, heart surgeon, he's good at, teaching medicine. I would not assume that.
No, I was about to say, academic institutions, it's actually a similar type of thing where it's just your status and your amount of time that you've put in that makes you a teacher, because so many of professors and so many of like doctorates at universities just can't fucking teach.
Yeah, but there's the financial incentive for that, because to teach at university you get paid, and lecturers, academics notoriously don't get paid a hell of a lot. So these people are fighting for funding. They're not getting paid a lot. And somebody goes, we'll give you X amount a year if you do 10 lectures a year. They couldn't give a first shit about your lecture, especially when you're in first year economics. My first year economics lecturer did not give a shit about us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and isn't that the same as jiu-jitsu? And it's notable of who the best coaches are, because the best coaches are people who do it because they want to be great coaches. Someone like so there's a guy, Eamon Madden. He is the coach of Aeon BJJ. He's also gets involved with like he coaches like just elite performers. He's like a psychological coach. I can't remember exactly what he does, but the point is, his whole angle has been around teaching people and growing people. Whereas, I think a lot of the incentive for starting jiu-jitsu gyms might be that you can just do jiu-jitsu and you can make a living out of it, which means that you can just compete afterwards. And those are two very different incentives to becoming a coach in jiu-jitsu and opening your own gym. But clearly, one of them you're trained for this task, and one of them you're really not.
Well, you're talking about barriers before in terms of starting a gym. There's a very limited authentication of who a person is as well. So I can't go and be a lecturer in economics at Oxford University because my shitty undergrad in economics isn't going to cut the mustard. They can check that. You have to do background checks. You have to do kind of DBS check, the criminal checks and things like that. To start a business for a BJJ gym, I don't actually have to confirm I'm a black belt. There's no confirmation system that I'm a black belt. I could start a gym tomorrow, put a black belt on and teach people some real McDojo shit. I could be like the worst coach in the world. I could be the baddest person in the world, but that's really difficult to find. And there's kind of, I think the question is, I'd pose to you guys is, do you think there's some sort of regulation of martial arts that could help, where people are checked a bit more, background checks are done a bit more? I know kind of it's topical at the minute with all the things that have been coming out about kind of coaches doing nefarious things to kind of instructors exploiting people. Is there something we could do around making the background checks to somebody running a gym better?
It's a good point. I mean, I would be very against background checking the skill level of someone before they can open a gym, because that seems like not a good measure. That seems like the sort of thing that should be measured by the results. And also, the community will call you out. If you're at all involved in the jiu-jitsu community and there's a fake black belt, you will hear about it. So I don't think that's necessary. But do you see what you mean about like CBR checks or is that the criminal?
I don't. Yeah, the criminal things. Like if you've been done for fraud in the past, it's really hard to start a business. Like those things like checks like that. Like I don't know if you've been involved in like violent crimes and things like that. Like there should be checks in the way you start a martial arts gym where you're kind of, especially in jiu-jitsu, it's hands-on instruction. If you're stood there, I don't know, teaching golf, and you're saying swing your arms to the left and take a step to the right, you're kind of not hands-on. The hands-on stuff of jiu-jitsu is like you're putting a lot of trust in that person to kind of be with them and kind of go onto the mat with them. Like to me, there's probably more regulation in the sports martial arts world that could be done from a safety perspective.
So I think there are some forms of checks for different martial arts, not BJJ, but I think there are like for karate or taekwondo. I think they have these things because there are a lot more kids involved.
Yeah. So I'm not sure about karate and taekwondo, but I believe there is for judo. But that's because there's a national governing body for judo.
Yeah. But I mean, we've already spoken, right? We had a podcast with BJJ Safeguard, the girl from BJJ Safeguard. So clearly, and she was there before all of this stuff started coming out, which is really good on her. She was already trying to do something about it before all of this recent things surfaced. But it's hard. It would have to be someone like UK BJJA in the UK in particular that paved the way. Just saying like they did. I mean, it's good that they did it, but on Instagram where they were saying, oh, we don't, we obviously condemn all these actions and so on, is one thing, but that's not really, that's not actionable.
Yes, because you're always going to be reactive at that point. You're always going to wait to react to something, and I think you've kind of got to nip it before it like grows into something nefarious, because you're only ever going to be firefighting then. And it's great people like are speaking up, but I'm kind of trying to think further about that. Like, what can we do to help jiu-jitsu get better in the long term and make sure it doesn't happen again and things like that?
So I think you'd struggle to enforce something to say you are not permitted to open a gym. I think you'd struggle to put that in and like you could pass legislation in the UK Parliament about jiu-jitsu coaching. I think that would be a problem. But what I like the idea of is like, what if there were, and I've seen a lot of people talking about this recently, about having sort of like a I don't know what you'd call it, like so Safe MMA, for example, will approve, they'll say, hey, look, this is a Safe MMA approved MMA show, right? Yeah. Something similar to that, because I saw people talking about different ways you could avoid things like this happening in the future, having more women involved in the management, having just stuff like that. And it'd be nice to see if you could say, look, they hit all these criteria, they get a 4 out of 5, they get a 5 out of 5 on this rating.
And it's like you put your gym forward for this accreditation and you get the kind of the same way the food industry has the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. Like after you've been on a night out and you see this takeaway's got a 1 star and you're like, that's definitely what I want at 2 a.m. Yeah. But
surely there are objective things that we can have as a rating of a gym, right? In terms of, do you have a system in place for giving complaints against sexual harassment or something? Do you have what is that system? How are you managing that system? Do you have a person who has been trained in sexual harassment? Things like this, surely they can be done.
So I like the idea, except for the fact that a lot of jiu-jitsu gyms are tiny and
money
is
a problem.
Not just money. I mean, it's the fact that it's run by a coach and a couple of people, a couple of students who are willing to help them out. I know a lot of gyms like that, right? It's fine for super gyms who have loads of staff who can be there to adjust things. But I mean, I can't imagine, like, I don't know, my MMA gym back home, Impact MMA, is run by Joe, the coach, and Suzanne, who basically sorts out all the important things like time and money and things, because the coach is fucking useless at that. But anyway, that's a story for another day. That's essentially how it works. They're not about to employ a welfare officer to have a system for lodging complaints, because I love the idea of having like an accreditation, but also it depends how much we buy into it, because on one hand you have to buy into it, otherwise it's irrelevant, because if you're not going to have a look at that, then why bother having the accreditation in the first place? But also, if you buy into it too much, it kills the small gyms where there's like starting out where there's like 20 people training, because of course they don't have an accreditation.
But then there's tiers to it, isn't there? Like, you could, like, what's the minimum? And I'm just kind of spitballing here, but like the minimum viable option to have like a safe gym for people to go to, and it could be 5 things. It could be your people are background checked, your whatever, and they kind of size is taken out of it, money's taken out of it in terms of, like you said, they're paying for a welfare officer. Great for a mega monolithic gym, but not possible elsewhere. If we had like kind of a bronze seal of approval, and the bronze seal of approval is this is defined by these characteristics, safe gym, they can go to different levels, different tiers, and it's a kudos thing for them. But as a standard, when you're looking online, when you're looking for a gym to go to, you can go to the website and be like, right, I need a gym in X part of London. Here are the list of gyms that have got all the accreditations. This one's more expensive. It's got 10,000 employees or whatever. I'm going to go to the smaller one. It's still registered for this level.
So you know what? I that could work. That's the sort of thing that could work. But I kind of think it comes back to the original point that, all right, so if it was any other organization, I don't think they have to have this whole self-regulating process for making sure that stuff like this gets dealt with. Hopefully in other organizations, it'll get dealt with, because if something bad happens, you go to the police, or if it's just crappy teaching, you stop going there. It gets back to the fact that we're just like, black belt must be important, must know his stuff. And we just kind of look past it all. So, the more we're talking about all these criteria and these things they could do, the more I'm like, why do we need this?
And you're so right. And I think, for me, this whole conversation, I've been thinking about what Guy Ramsey said. Lee, remember when we were interviewing him? He was so clear on the fact that he hates even people calling him coach.
Yes, yeah.
He doesn't want any kind of level of extra respect just because he's teaching someone. And if we have people, if we teach people, I mean, this is such a shift in the mindset that it's like a complete, shift in paradigm shift in the sport, really, to be able to think this way. But if we had black belts, from the get-go, not projecting some kind of level of, I am the boss, you are my loyal servants, and actually be at the same level as everyone, which is what it seems like, Guy wants that in his gym, for example. Then
it's like the university thing, right? You join a club at university, and the freshers get like, you've got to drink this, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. And then the freshers come around the next year and they go, fucking yes, revenge. I'm going to do it on the new kids. And it's the same kind of system where your black belt growing up has been like, I'm this, I'm that, you'll call me this, you'll bow this. Then when you get there, you're like, yeah, I need that respect as well. They're like, oh, just call me Lee and give me a fist bump and learn jiu-jitsu. It could.
Oh, Lee, you're so cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm just a trendsetter,
See, I wonder if that's, for example, if 10th Planet has more of that, because they seem to be just very open that way. And the fact that, for example, you don't even have a fucking belt, like they don't really give belts. So maybe it's just the problem with the fucking belt system.
Does the belt make the difference? There's not.
Yeah, of course it does. Of course it does. Because that's the whole problem. Because people don't do the same thing when it's a really good purple belt coach, or like one of the best coaches. Honestly, one of the best coaches I've ever had. I still maintain it was Dan, not just in striking, but in grappling as well. Dan from Exile. He is one of the best coaches I've ever had, and I think he's technically a blue belt in jiu-jitsu. And I just don't think that. I think maybe if he opened a gym and he was running the whole thing, he might be able to get that kind of awe. Although I expect he'll sort of dismiss it, he will take a sort of Guy Ramsey approach nonetheless. But I just don't think him, despite him being such a high level coach, I don't think if he was going around like a Jiu-Jitsu Open, people are going to be like, oh, like in the same way that it's when it's a black belt, despite the fact that he's fantastic at what he does. Yeah, it's definitely the belt.
Yeah. It's like a weird celebrity thing that comes with it, isn't it? It's like,
I think there's a big difference between those coaches that are chill like that and don't enforce loads of rules, and then there's this brand of coach where they get people to call them professor.
yes.
And I'm like, what is like what professor? Like, coach is fine by my standards. He is coaching you. He is your coach. That is fine to me. I understand guys' approach, but still. But when you get the title professor, I'm like, you just like your qualifications are that you can strangle people. Like,
yeah. Do you know what?
It's
funny
them for a service. Like, it's mutually
That's
beneficial
thing,
trade.
right?
I give you money, you teach me what you know about jiu-jitsu. It's not this weird kind of professor subservient relationship. It's I give you money and you teach me jiu-jitsu. I should call you Dave.
Yeah, and I think a lot of coaches forget that. I mean, I've experienced it myself, where you're not treated like a customer, which you fucking are. Let's not forget, if you're a black belt and you're teaching someone, that person is paying you money. You're meant to treat them like someone who's paying you money.
Did you just say the customer's always right? Have you turned into a Karen?
Customer's always right.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is more. Obviously, we kind of all think there's more to it in jiu-jitsu, in terms of the customer sort of coach relationship. But yeah, it's a good point, and it seems to be forgotten by everyone who does jiu-jitsu that at the end of the day, they're paying for a service as well as to be part of this group. And it seems like there's a lot more focus put on the group side of things, which I think is, and this part of the trouble. This is one of the, like, you're part of this whole family, and that's part of the strengths of jiu-jitsu. And a lot of these problems arise from the things that are really cool and really interesting about jiu-jitsu. But I think people need to remember this kind of in the context of you're in the normal world. Normal rules apply.
The problem with that is if I go to Tesco and get bad customer service, I go to Sainsbury's, wherever. I'm part of my jiu-jitsu gym's group. Now, the keys to that group is the coach, the black belt, whoever. Now, if I don't do as he says, act the way he wants, conform to the rules that they set, they can ostracize me from the group and be like, you're out, you're not welcome to train here anymore. That is very dangerous, because that's a weird. I know Robbie and Alex used to do the same. When you get into jiu-jitsu, you get obsessive about jiu-jitsu, and you do it a lot, and you get really close to the people you train with quite quickly. And especially when that's all you do, when all you train is jiu-jitsu, you tend to find at least 50% of your friends are from the jiu-jitsu gym. That's how me and Robbie met. And if the coach holds the keys to that relationship, in terms of with everybody else, because if the coach goes, this guy's a dick, don't speak to him, people tend to believe that and go, oh yeah, like Lee is a dick, like Lee's not coming back anymore, and the coach holds the narrative. Then you've suddenly lost a group of friends, you've suddenly lost your, I don't know, support group of who you chat to, people you go to the pub with, whatever. That is very dangerous, and that's where I think the abuse happens with the power trip, because the coach then does that.
Yeah, and that's going to be a hard one to get around, because again, the whole family friend aspect is one of the strong things about jiu-jitsu, and I don't really see many other ways, unless you actually had like a community run gym, which isn't very likely because at the end of the day, there is always someone who puts the backing in terms of money and experience behind a gym, and that is the black belt. That's why he's held at the head. It's at the head of the organization. I think it's just the trouble that I don't know. I mean, he is important in this environment, but it's kind of the fact that he gets away with stuff that's not really within this environment, where it can be a problem. And the thing is, most coaches don't try to get away with stuff outside of it, but it is this weird idea that we give them the power to do that.
Yeah. I know we are, I think, to caveat for anybody listening, we are talking about the few, not the many. And it kind of feels like we're going all black belts are bad guys. We're not. But they are dangerous.
That's this again. It's not. But that's it again. It's not about black belts being bad people. Black belts are just people. Yes. The problem is that everyone around them gives them an enormous amount of power. So those ones that are going to do bad things just get away with stuff. But and again, I think we keep coming back to the bad things. It's not just about that either. It's the fact that you can be a terrible teacher, you can be incompetent, but you can just get away with it because you've got a black belt as well. It's the fact that we just get the wool pulled over our eyes to every other aspect. They're just great at strangling people, and so therefore they get all that respect.
Yeah.
I think if you're a black belt, you just need to be extra careful and check your ego often. Because you are in that position of respect by belt, essentially. So you need to be extra careful with how you behave, in my opinion, because ego is a fun thing, and what we can't forget is, in the grand scheme of things, you're just another guy. You might have a black belt, but there are in other areas of life, you might not be the best person. So it's it's a strange one. It's a strange one.
I think it's one of the big tech companies, and I don't want to get into tech companies, but I think they had written on the wall for a while, "Don't be a dick," and it's kind of like that. It's like you saying, check your ego. Like, yeah, check your ego, but I was like, Jiu-Jitsu loves this thing, right, where we're like, leave your ego at the door. Like, it's the most humbling experience up until you're really fucking good at Jiu-Jitsu, and then you can do what you want. And like that's where it needs to be. Like, check your ego, don't be a dick, help people out, get into like the sport of what it is meant to be. And I think a lot of people do, but I think people's character is where I don't think becoming a black belt makes you a bad person, or I don't think that shift happens. I think that's a character trait that's in you anyway. You've just become a black belt and exploited that situation. So I think the problem isn't jiu-jitsu, the problem isn't the role, it's bad people getting to that level and then holding that level and exploiting their opportunity, which is what they've got there.
Yeah, I mean, it's the low barrier to entry.
Yes, yeah.
People have when they shouldn't be able to do these things.
We hope you enjoyed that episode. If you did, please consider subscribing to the podcast and checking us out on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram under the name Combat Thoughts. We'll see you next time.